Good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the EU-Canada discussion on common challenges and cooperation on the integration of migrant women. This is the concluding event of the fourth edition of the Canada-EU Migration Platform, a joint initiative of the European Commission, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, and the Mission of Canada to the European Union. Through its 3 technical webinars, this year's edition had offered practitioners, policymakers, and migrant women themselves a privileged environment for sharing experiences and best practices on migrant women integration in the economy, participation in the society, and health outcomes in Canada and in the European Union. The outcomes report, which analyzes the findings of the webinars, is now available for free download, both on the European website on integration and on the website of the Delegation of Canada to the European Union. You should be able to see it on the same page if you're watching us from the European website on integration, or you will find the link if you are watching us on YouTube. Today's high-level discussion draws on the webinar and the outcome report to reflect on policy recommendations to improve the overall integration and well-being of migrant women for more inclusive societies. On the International Migrants Day, our discussion aims at celebrating the outstanding contribution that migrant women, when provided equal opportunities to their host countries, and it aims at encouraging transformative changes that can further empower migrant women for more and more such contributions in the future. I am Maria Vincenza Desiderio. I'm the editor and one of the authors of the Outcomes Report, and I'm delighted to facilitate today's discussion. I would like to invite all of you who are watching us to also contribute to the discussion by participating in the interactive Mentimeter poll. The link and access code should be provided at the bottom of your screens or in the dialog box in YouTube. Now, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Elish Campbell, who is Ambassador Designate of Canada to the European Union, and then to Mr. Brian Glean, who is Managing Director for the Americas at European External Action Service, for their opening remarks. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup pour cette introduction. Aujourd'hui, à l'occasion de la Journée internationale des migrants, nous avons l'occasion de célébrer les réalisations, les contributions et le leadership des migrants et certainement aussi des femmes migrantes. C'est aussi l'occasion de mettre en lumière les inégalités persistantes, la discrimination et les injustices auxquelles les femmes migrantes sont encore confrontées, tout en redoublant d'efforts pour construire un monde où règne l'égalité des genres. The gender focus of this year's Canada-EU Migration Platform Initiative marks the time to renew Canada's commitment to advance gender equality in incredibly close collaboration with our amazing EU partners. We've made great efforts in the Canada-EU Platform series, which I hope you'll all benefit from, to bring together a very diverse group of workshop speakers and participants. Their insights have highlighted persistent, real challenges for migrant women and also the broad range of activities and practices needed to create the conditions for successful integration. Canada's advocacy and support for gender equality and women's empowerment is evident in its feminist foreign policy, whereby Canada commits to apply a feminist approach across its entire international policy, advocacy, and programming suites. The EU is a vital ally for us on gender issues across multilateral fora as well. Recently, the European Commission has reaffirmed its own commitment to gender equality with its Gender Equality Strategy 2020 to 25, which follows Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's call to achieve a union of equality at her State of the Union address last September. Let's be very conscious of the current context that we're in. The COVID-19 pandemic has made all of our work all the more vital. Canada and the EU have reaffirmed our commitment to work closely together based on our strategic partnership agreement, which aims to defend and revitalize the rules-based international order and strengthen our efforts to support gender equality, pluralism, international peace and security, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Despite all our hard work and heartfelt commitment, we still have a very long way to go to ensure that migrant women, girls, transgender, non-binary, intersectional, and two-spirited peoples have the same support, opportunities, and outcomes as native-born populations and male migrants. I wish to thank Minister Mendicino, who, like me, I believe, is a child of immigrants, and Commissioner Johansson for their presence here today. It's deeply appreciated. Anila Noor and Iman Dabusi also for sharing your perspectives. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me also extend a few words of deep gratitude to the organizing team who made this event possible, including my colleagues at the Mission of Canada to the European Union, in Canada representatives of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, the European Commission, and the European External Action Service, as well as the Canada-EU Dialogue Facility. Putting together an online event of this magnitude and scope is no easy feat, and I commend each of you for your efforts over the past few months. Thank you. Aujourd'hui, célébrons ensemble les réalisations majeures des femmes migrantes partout dans le monde et continuons à faire avancer l'égalité des genres. Nous en tirons tous profiter lorsque tout le monde a une chance égale de prospérer et nous avons tous un rôle à jouer pour en faire une réalité. We each have a role to play in making equality and integration a reality. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Now, Mr. Gleam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Dr. Ailish Campbell as Canada's new ambassador designate to the European Union. I understand in mentioning that she is the child of migrants, one of those might be a female migrant from the country I come from, Ireland. She's particularly welcome, and I look forward to meeting her when conditions allow again in Brussels. Canada is one of the closest and longest standing partners of the European Union, with extensive historical, economic and cultural bonds, and it's also an indispensable ally in multilateral fora. So I'm very much looking forward to working closely with Alison and her team to take forward this very important strategic partnership. I'm particularly pleased that the EU-Canada Migration Platform has become a valuable forum for the exchange of expertise and best practices, and that this year we're honoured by the presence of Commissioner Johansson and the Honourable Minister Mendicino. I mentioned that I come from Ireland. I'm fully aware of the challenges, but also the opportunities that migrants encounter. I have 7 sisters. 3 of those sisters emigrated from Ireland, 2 to the country to the south of Canada, and 1 to our neighbour next door in the United Kingdom. For us in the European Union, it's very important that we take a moment to focus on women migrants, look at the significant economic and social contributions they make in their host countries, and raise awareness and understanding of the challenges they're confronted with in their pursuit of a better life. It is vital that the EU and Canada work hand in hand to address migration as a global phenomenon that no country can effectively manage on its own. Like Canada, we are convinced of the importance of working together, fostering effective multilateral approaches based on solidarity, human rights, and a rules-based international order. We welcome Minister Mendicino's positive message at the recent first regional review of the UN Global Compact on Migration, reiterating this cooperative approach. At a time when gender equality and women's rights are increasingly questioned, and the socioeconomic consequences of the COVID-19 crisis are adversely affecting women and girls, the European Commission and the High Representative Josep Borrell are proposing an ambitious and comprehensive agenda to address these challenges. The new action plan on gender equality and women's empowerment in external action confirms gender equality as a key objective of the EU's common foreign and security policy. It aims to contribute to the empowerment of women and girls to fully use their rights and increase their participation in political, economic, social, and cultural life. It also seeks to tackle all intersecting dimensions of discrimination, paying specific attention to migrant women, with women and girls accounting for approximately half of all international migrants. We need to ensure their rights are fully realized through gender-responsive migration policies and governance. I'd like to welcome the work of the Migration Platform that contributes to the attainment of this objective, and also to express my sincere appreciation to the representatives of migrant women for sharing their knowledge, and all of you who helped make this important event come together. Today's high-level discussion on the integration of migrant women is a concrete expression of our joint commitment with Canada to forge cooperation and enhance dialogue on the multifaceted issue of migration. And one final comment before I finish. In my one visit to Canada, to Quebec, I visited Gros-Île, where during the most difficult time in Ireland's history, thousands of migrant women fleeing famine in Ireland were received very generously and very graciously into a Canada that was then a very new nation. And those migrant women went on to forge the Canada that we know today. And we will continue in the European Union with Canada to work together on this very important task. I wish you a very fruitful discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Glean, and thank you again, Ambassador, for this forward-looking ouverture. Let us now all watch a brief video with highlights on the Canada-EU Migration Platform.
As part of their common platform on migration, Canada and the European Union focused on the integration of migrant women this year to advance gender equality. In November 2020, more than 200 participants were brought together, including migrant women and key actors in integration. The event featured 15 thematic sessions with over 20 panelists. The discussions highlighted that successful integration goes beyond just employment. It entails full participation in society, building social networks, and getting a job that matches skills and aspirations. All of this contributes to individual well-being and a sense of belonging, and ultimately to a more cohesive society. It was a great opportunity to identify issues, explore policies, and forge closer cooperation between the EU and Canada to develop effective approaches to the integration of migrant women. Let's continue the discussion together.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll now exchange my moderator hat with the presenter hat for a few minutes to guide you through the main findings from the webinar and the outcomes report in a way of setting the scene for the more interactive part of our conversation. Migrant women make up for slightly more than half of all foreign-born population in Canada and in the European Union as a whole. For this half of the migrant population, the pathway to integration is more rough, is bumpier. This is unequal, this is a huge waste of talent, and this is dangerous in the long term for the cohesion of our society, because children of immigrants' outcomes are disproportionately affected by the outcomes of their mothers. Multiple elements, intersection of multiple factors stemming from migration status, gender, ethnicity, and other personal characteristics create a set of disadvantages that affect immigrant women integration in the labor market, but not only in the labor market. Their outcomes are, they have worse labor market outcomes as compared to their male counterparts, as well as migrant women in Canada and European Union. But migrant women are also less likely to participate in non-ethnic organized groups, and they are more likely to have unmet health needs, including at the prenatal and postnatal time, which was crucial for women. And all these challenges have been exacerbated by the pandemic. Now, of course, migrant women are a very diverse group. The highly skilled, highly educated, those who enter for work purposes fare better than those who at admission have a weaker link with the labor market. And in fact, the overrepresentation of migrant women in the largest non-work related category, family migration, is part of the explanation why overall worse outcomes for migrant women are observed both in Canada and in the European Union. Refugee women, women exhibiting visible signs of belonging to ethnic or religious minority, LGBTIQ women are a particular risk here. And age is an important factor too. Many migrant women arrive in their host country at the childbearing age and have children soon after arrival, which de facto may exclude them not only for labor market access, but also for integration services, for settlement service, when these are designed without taking into account the needs of migrant women, and in this case, the needs of mothers. So what can we do to make the integration journey of migrant women smoother? One broad set of recommendations which came from the webinars regarded enabling policies. These are policies which allow migrant women to access existing integration and settlement services on equal footing as men, alleviating the burdens that, for instance, can stem from predominant household responsibility and care responsibilities. This is not about creating a new integration policies for migrant women, but bridging women into existing policies. A key example of one of these actions is mother and child language teaching, but more broadly, any policy, any action which factors flexibility in integration and settlement services, flexibility with regard to schedules, to curricula, to physical attendance. This COVID crisis has shown that distance learning is good for adult learners, for sure. Of course, they have to have the skills required, to digital skills required. Another enabling action is, of course, taking a lifelong approach to integration, which is particularly relevant for migrant women, because as we have said, they might not be able to attend measures at the time of arrival, but this is normally the time when more measures are available. So make them available throughout the life cycle, which is also beneficial for all migrants, because it's important to address other issues which arise at other moments of the integration and settlement process, not only access to labor market, but career progression, for instance, in the case of labor market. Another approach, innovative approach, which has been suggested during the webinars, has been take a whole of family approach to integration. For instance, at the outset of integration process, have a whole of family interview. This would allow to tailor the support to the individual needs, to the individual assets, but also to the constraints of each member of the family unit. And both these enabling policies and these whole of family policies have an advantage, which is not stigmatizing migrant women. If we create a policy only for migrant women, we might risk sending the message that their gender characteristic predestinate them to lower outcomes, which is not what we want to say. Then this year's edition of the Canada-EU Migration Platform upheld the importance of promoting social integration as a key standalone pillar for integration. For too long, we have considered labor market integration as the only catalyst of overall integration. But our migrant populations are increasingly diverse. Many migrants would not enter the labor market immediately after arrival, and many women would not. And some would never enter the labor market. And we cannot allow these people just to be excluded from our societies. So initiatives fostering civic participation in the community, community gardening, sports, leisure activities, volunteering. These are key. These are key for migrant women in particular. And we heard in the webinars a call on local governments to support more and more these initiatives where the COVID crisis fragilizes them, of course, because with the ban on gatherings, this is really a challenge. But we really heard strong voices to say, please keep supporting, safeguard these initiatives. This year's edition of the Canada EU Migration Platform also put the spotlight on the linkages between health and integration. This was something a bit neglected in the past, and this now is coming to the fore also in the new integration action plan. This is particularly important because migrant women may have specific health needs, and we are not even talking about the women who are affected by these very traumatic experiences of sexual exploitation, genital mutilation. Of course, this exists and needs to be tackled, and doctors and medical professionals in host countries need to be aware of these issues and how to address this, including with adequate communication. But it's more widespread. This is mental health issues. This is how to address victims of gender-based violence, which we know during this COVID crisis is increasing, and which is and in some cases, migrant women are more at risk for that because their permit might be tied to the one of their partner, or because of poor housing condition, etc., etc. So migrant women might be more affected by health issues, and at the same time, they are less likely to receive quality health support because of language issues, because of the burdens we described earlier, because of cultural issues. So raising awareness among all service providers on these issues, on how to communicate health issues with migrant women, training, and also, very important point, diversity recruitment in, for instance, in our hospitals. Our countries are full of many doctors and nurses, foreign qualified, who are working in other occupations because they face so many difficulties in having their qualification recognized. Now, time is ripe to bring back these doctors and nurses to their original occupations. And my last couple of points. So we said, we heard designing integration policies only for migrant women might not work, but scrutinizing all integration and also settlement and also social policies through gender lenses, this is key. One way of doing this is upgrading migrant women's responsibility in the design and implementation of these policies. More and more frequently, migrant women are consulted in the decision-making process, and we can only welcome the establishment of a new expert group on the views of migrants at the level of the Commission. But a shift will be moving from consulting to co-decision. And this is not something that can happen overnight. It requires removing barriers and to equal access to civil service, public office. Nordic countries in Europe have succeeded in enlarging the participation of their migrant population in their public sector. Now, this is something which should take into account, particularly for migrant women, which will also help changing narrative about migrant women. And this leads me to my almost final point, which is we need to change narrative on migrant women. All too often, migrant women are described as burdens to the welfare system, but they bring assets, they really bring opportunities for their host country. So there's the need for a shift. Put the spotlight on stories of individual empowerment, of positive contribution to the host society, which would also help tackle discrimination issue. And one important issue which affects the integration trajectory, which is loss of self-confidence. And again, the COVID crisis may offer an opportunity here because migrant women are overrepresented in care services, essential services. These people are at the front line. They make our daily life less crazy these days. So let's use this momentum to promote a new narrative. Of course, and this is my last point, a credible narrative and effective policies need to be grounded on solid data. And here there's a really strong need, we heard from the discussion, to expand datasets which allow to assess the intersectionality of gender, migration, and ethnicity and its impacts on the integration of migrant women. All in all, there's a transformative change which is needed. Now, after all that, I think it's my time to hear from migrant women who went themselves through this rough and bumpy pathway with resilience. They were resilient enough to succeed, and actually they are now helping other migrants to succeed their integration trajectory. So I'm very happy to introduce here Iman Daboussi. Iman landed in Canada in 2014 as a refugee from Lebanon, where she left a lucrative career as a gynecologist, but she was also fleeing domestic abuse. Since 2018, Iman, who is the mother of 6 children, has been working with Immigrant Women's Services Ottawa as a settlement counselor and interpreter. Iman, I think our audience would be very interested to hear how the policy recommendations resonate with your own personal integration journey and with the paths of the women you support every day. The floor is yours, Iman.
Thank you for that nice introduction, Maria. And thank you for inviting me to speak here today and to be part of this event. I'm honored to share this platform with Anila Noor, Commissioner Johansson, and Minister Mendicino to speak about these important issues. As Maria mentioned in my introduction, I am from Lebanon, where I was a practicing gynecologist, and I came to Canada over 6 years ago. The policy recommendations really resonated with me and my own experience as an immigrant woman to Canada, especially the 2 recommendations about raising awareness among settlement service providers about specific health issues and also the need to take a whole of family approach to integration. I have 6 children myself, and this was a big part of my immigration experience because they were and remain my first priority. There are many obstacles and challenges for immigrant women throughout the immigration process, which creates challenges for integration. In my own experience, I wasn't aware of the many resources available to me in the beginning, and I had difficulty accessing some supports because of cultural barriers. I work with Immigrant Women's Services Ottawa, a community-based agency which provides comprehensive settlement supports to migrant women in general and women victims of abuse in particular. As a settlement counselor and interpreter, I see women that have similar challenges, such as language barriers, computer illiteracy barriers, or even certain hidden obstacles, such as being ridiculed by family members for trying to learn the new language. Even many services that are taken for granted, such as counseling, police, or legal supports for victims of domestic abuse, could be inaccessible only because of ignorance and cultural taboos, unfortunately. I think that having a holistic approach and multidisciplinary one that targets immigrant women immediately following their landing into Canada is really important so that they know where to find supports when they need them. It is important to have a coordinated approach between the different levels of government, settlement services, and adult and second language schools, so that there are many entry points for immigrant women to connect with resources and service providers. Patriarchy remains a major issue, and many women continue to be marginalized and have limited autonomy in their daily lives because male family members are the exclusive decision makers in certain cultures, and this impacts the immigrant family dynamics. It is really important to make sure that more information about the available resources reaches women in different formats, in different languages, and in a variety of spaces so that they know that these services and resources are there for them to access. Based on my own migration journey and what I have seen working with women in the Ottawa area, I think it is really important to connect women to settlement services very early in the process, because that would support faster integration, especially when those women are in situations of family abuse and control. It is also important to talk about delicate topics: gender equality, healthy family dynamics, mental health issues, and domestic violence in settlement programming, such as language curriculum. Digital literacy is also often a big issue. It even restricts women's movements when they cannot look up information for bus routes or Google Maps or how to find a service they need. There should be more emphasis on combining language classes with digital literacy so that women feel empowered and even more autonomous. There are many expectations placed on migrant women, but they are ones that are often the primary, or in many cases, the sole caregivers. In my own case, for example, when I landed in Canada 6 years ago, it was logistically impossible for me to dedicate enough energy and time to transfer my medical and specialty degrees while being a sole support parent with 3 young kids. On the bright side, the single most life-changing landmark during my immigration journey has been when I got to know about resources and institutions such as the Immigrant Women's Services Ottawa, who literally opened unlimited skies and horizons for me and for my family. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this important discussion.
Thank you, Iman. Thank you for this vibrant intervention. I'd like now to turn to Anila Noor. Anila is a refugee activist based in the Netherlands. She belongs herself to a displaced Kashmiri Pakistani refugee family. She initiated the new Women Connectors, a movement aimed at mainstreaming the voices of migrant and refugee women across Europe. She has been extensively advising various institutions at the local, EU, and global level on integration and diversity issues. And the list is so long, but I'm sure Anila has even a longer list of insightful comments to our policy findings and recommendations. So without further ado, Anila, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mario, for your kind introduction. And it's truly a privilege and pleasure to share this platform with the Commissioner and with the President, Minister. It's really long journey where I'm standing today, and I would like to appreciate this initiative and would like to share my recommendation and also the recommendation which we have put together with having the discussion since last few weeks. And this recommendation really resonate with my advocacy, with my struggle, which we really want to create an inclusive policies, regardless is Canada or in Europe is happening and discrimination is still happening. We really need to upgrade immigrants women's participation in integration policy and settlement services. And this is the best recommendation is there in the recommendation which you will have soon in your agenda. So this recommendation, why we need it? Because is allowing enabling policy to allow equal opportunity for migrant women in accessing integration and labor market services while avoiding stigmatization. We really want to ensure resourcing and investment to make sure we have constant and sustainable enabling refugee migrants direct participation and meaningful participation and engagement in, which requires a need investment to create a systematic engagement. And I really recommend to create one kind of migrant woman-led expert group where they can share their own voices, their own journey, their own problems by themselves. The second recommendation which I would like to highlight is about how we can develop solid database which allow to access the intersectionality of gender, migration, and ethnicity, because this is really needed. My experience as a refugee working with the refugee and migrant women communities shows there is a huge gap in understanding what's the problem, how they are defining these problems, and if we get the question right, we will get the answer right. So that's why we need to really understand the gender inequalities in education, employment, entrepreneurship, health, in development and governance, and it's really show how far we are from achieving gender equality and which action really needed. It will help us to create the accurate efficiency response to build mechanism of opportunity to collaboration. Also, it's a way to protect privacy and human rights. Taking into account data is a foundation of inclusivity, which means data is giving a real-time situation awareness to ability to shine a light on the invisible form data. Improving information of lives of migrant refugee women, girls, and especially most vulnerable groups. And we need to improvement of in accountability and transparency. Ultimately, the data revolution can lead to enhanced understanding and advocacy led by refugee and migrant women. They need to be involved in this data collection and need to be designed this all how we can gather this data. We need to create a platform where they come together and to show what is missing and how we can improve that. And lastly, I really like to invite all of you. We need to change the narrative how we talk about immigrant women from the migration background. We really need to take them from burden to asset. Since 2015, my advocacy for equal and inclusive integration policy reminding me again and again why it is important for me to talk about myself by myself, to be involved in the discussion. We need to make sure not to change the narrative just in a policy making as a buzzword. This is a clear need to demonstrate how to generate and how we can make understanding around changing the narrative for migrant women from passive to resilient. They are leaders, we are leaders, and we are here to have our equal access. We really need to address the need to evaluate even the understanding how we understand their narratives and how we use their narratives. We need to evaluate internal approach to changing these narratives, which really require to include refugee and migrant-led organization. And lastly, I would like to say the voices of lived experience of refugee women is really invaluable, and it's a procedure and it's a process we need to create together. I would like to conclude my remarks by saying this. I'm saying we would like to connect all these recommendations as a step of a ladder with a key component that we need to change a narrative visibility of migrant and women as a leader, and we really need resources for the refugee and migrant-led organization. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you, Anila. As I fully expected, you have set a dense agenda for policymakers and practitioners. Now, I'm deeply honored to introduce Ms. Ylva Johansson, the EU Commissioner for Home Affairs. Commissioner, 3 weeks ago, you launched a new action plan on integration and inclusion. How do the outcomes of the platform and the comments made by Anila and Iman resonate with the action plan, but also with your broader portfolio and your long-standing experience as an integration policymaker?
Thank you very much, Maria, and I'm very honored to be part of this important discussion. And I will answer your question soon, but let me first start with what many of you have mentioned about the narrative. I think it's so important because both migration in Europe sometimes is seen as a threat. But migration is something normal. And every year we have 2 to 3 million people coming to the European Union, and they are welcome and they are needed. We need migration and we need to welcome people warmly into the local communities. So this is important that we show also the importance that migrants are how important they are into our society. If migrants for one day would not go to work, for example, the whole society will actually close down. So this is important. And then I will also say that it's important that we see there is a huge risk of stereotypes when it comes especially to migrant women. They are sometimes hidden. When we talk about migrants, the women are hidden. When you talk about women, the migrants women are hidden. And then it leaves migrant women into a stereotype. But migrant women are as diverse as anybody else. They're very different, and of course not as one person. They're very diverse, and that's of course the richness and the importance to see that. I think it's important that we also, I'm very happy to be here also together in the EU-Canada platform, and happy to have Minister Marco Minichi here as well. I've been to Canada several times in my previous position to learn a lot from the integration in Canada. I think we have a lot in common and a lot to learn from each other. In my previous life, I've been a minister in 5 different governments in Sweden, and been responsible by other things also for integration and labor market and social policy and health and education and a lot of different things. And in all that, it's important to address integration. Another thing I would like to say, it's important that we have Iman and Anila here, because we should never talk about migrants without migrants. We should not talk about migrant women without migrant women. So I think this is important, and that's one reason why I set up a special expert group with people, men and women, with coming from all over the world, actually, with a lot of own experience and expertise. And Anila is part of my expert group, actually, so I'm happy to see you there. So to answer your question on the action plan that I put forward on integration and inclusion, it focuses on what the European Commission can do to facilitate, to support, to coordinate, and not at least important, to fund integration measures in the member states. And that focus on jobs, on education, on health, and on housing. So all these areas are, of course, important. And I must say that maybe the most important thing is to not underestimate the strength, the energy, the ambition, the capacity, the skills that migrant women have. I think that, of course, sometimes we also need to address the vulnerabilities and the special needs. That is important. I'm the first one to say that. But I think too often we are underestimating the other side, all the possibilities, all the strengths, or the skills, or the capacities that migrant women have. And we have a lot of well-educated migrant women that are not being able to work in their profession. They are being, it's twice as common that migrant women are overqualified for the jobs compared to a woman born in Europe, for example. But we also have other problems with migrant women that have never been working for money. They are always worked, of course, but maybe never at a workplace or being paid for their work. And they have a very, very long journey to come into the labor market in the European Union. But it's possible. And I can tell you about the Jalla Trappan, for example, in Sweden, that reaches out to migrant women that have never, ever been to a workplace, never, ever been paid for their work, that have been totally working for their family and for their community. And they are introducing women and by strengthening them, by giving them self-confidence, by working together in a cooperative that has been very, very successful. And it's such a good thing to see these women growing, being stronger, using all the capacity that they have, but they have been hidden because they thought that their capacity was not asked for in the new country. So I think this is also talking about this whole of family approach. I think it's important to recognize how much it meant for children and for the whole family when the mother is a strong mother that can earn her own money, that is proud of herself, and that use all her capacity. So this, I think, it's really, really important. And sometimes when I talk about integration and inclusion with member states, it's there's a lot of good things going on, of course, but sometimes I think we also focus sometimes too much on problems, because integration is not rocket science. It's about being welcomed. It's about being part of society. And that's always on the local level. So that's why we need to support a local level. You are never integrated into a state or into the European Union. You're integrated into a local community. And that's where we need to support. And I think it was interesting what Iman said about sometimes migrant women, and she was also not aware of the support available. And that's a bit my problem as a commissioner, because sometimes the member states or the local level in the member states are not aware of the support that is available from the Commission when it comes to funding, for example. So this is what I'm trying to do with the action plan. We are pointing out a lot of specific actions that need to take place, but also that we should regularly invite member states to help them to navigate in the funds that are available to actually fund the different actions. I think also what Anila said about data collection is really important. In my view, statistics are a woman's best friend. It's important to know what we are doing and what are the results, and to show the reality. That's a way to get away from the stereotypes. That's also a way to show what are working and what are not working. And that's why I would like to set up a database and gather information on results from different member states, to do like a benchmark between member states, also to learn from each other and to see how good result that is actually possible to get on integration, and to learn from that for different for other member states. So the last thing I would like to say to finalize here, and I'm ready, of course, to answer question and take part in the debate, is that the most important thing is to avoid stereotypes, avoid underestimating the strength and the capacity of migrant women, and last but not least, we have also to fight discrimination and racism, because it's there. And it's a clear obstacle for integration. And it's important that we speak out clearly about the need for all of us to actually change our way of behaving to fight racism and stereotypes. I think in Europe, for example, too many people equate being European with being white. And look at the Commission. Almost all people working in the Ballamon that are not cleaning or security persons are white. So it's important with diversity that we show migrant women also as role models, and take that into account on recruiting people, to show that being European is being diverse. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your inspiring words and for your strong determination in upholding the agenda for more inclusive, gender equitable integration policies across Europe. I now have the great privilege of introducing the Honorable Marco Mendicino, Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, the country all of us working on migration and integration look at as a model. A country built by immigration, where diversity keeps being celebrated every day as a key element of the nation building narrative, as much as the community level as at the federal level. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you. Merci. Grazie, Maria, for that very kind introduction. Bonjour, tout le monde. I realize that we're having to gather virtually right now instead of being able to gather in person, but I still feel very much like we're among friends. And in particular, I want to thank you, Commissioner Johansson, for your very motivational words, in particular, your last comment about really embracing diversity, something that is a value we cherish here in Canada. To our ambassador, thank you for all of your hard work in representing Canada in the EU, as well as for your message. To our very eloquent speakers, including Maria, Iman, Marhaba, Anila, and to Brian, who is a member of a very modest Irish family with your 7 sisters. I also want to thank our mission in the EU and all the organizers for facilitating this very important discussion today. I bring greetings on behalf of our Prime Minister and the Government of Canada. On this International Migrants Day, I'm honored to be joining our European friends and counterparts at this 4th edition of the EU-Canada Migration Platform event. Je suis heureux d'avoir l'occasion d'apprendre de nos estimés collègues conférenciers, notamment la commissaire Johansson, Madame Noor et Madame Debussy. Je tiens également à féliciter la commissaire Johansson pour le lancement récent de nouveaux plans d'action de l'Union européenne en faveur de l'intégration et de l'inclusion 2021 à 2027. Le Canada et l'Union européenne entretiennent depuis longtemps des liens qui unissent leurs peuples, une amitié et une coopération sur les questions de migration. Je suis heureux de vous partager l'expérience et le point de vue du Canada concernant l'intégration des femmes migrantes. It goes without saying that Canada and Europe have a long history when it comes to migration. The very first immigrants to Canada were Europeans, and over the centuries, millions of Europeans have made their home in all corners of our land. And this includes my own family, who arrived here from Italy in the years following the Second World War. Our shared values, ideals, and goals have resulted in years of fruitful cooperation, which brings us to why we are here today. As we face a global pandemic and chart a course for a recovery, we're very conscious of the impact that COVID-19 has had on women, especially migrant women. And let's be honest here, while some employ the cliche that COVID-19 has been the great equalizer, the reality is that nothing could be further from the truth. The impact of this pandemic has varied greatly, and both women and newcomers have been disproportionately affected. That's why today's focus on migrant women is so timely. Across the major social, economic, and political integration indicators, the sad reality is that migrant women have unequal outcomes, and this is before the impact of the pandemic. We have an opportunity to ensure that women's hard-won economic, social, and political gains are not just protected at this challenging moment, but advanced. And this is the top of our mind from Prime Minister Trudeau, myself, and our entire government. We're proud to be a world leader in integrating immigrants, something that was recently recognized by MIPEX's Migrant Integration Policy Index. Yet in this era of upheaval, we must redouble our efforts to safeguard our progress, particularly when it comes to the most vulnerable migrant women among them. And so we're acting. This starts with listening to those with lived experience, or to put it another way, as we heard earlier, lived expertise. Whether crafting policies or designing programs, we must ensure that the voices of migrant women are central to all that we do. This is something I am personally invested in, hearing directly from women during roundtables and conversations over the past month. You know, I heard from Iman that she had interacted with the Women's Service Organization in Ottawa. In fact, I just had a very invigorating roundtable with them less than a week ago. And we heard about their concerns. We heard about the increase in gender-based violence coinciding and being exacerbated by COVID-19. But we also heard about how volunteering was up and how the efforts to ensure that there was a safe and unjudgmental space so that supports could be offered in education, in language, in digital literacy, and in ensuring that migrant women were getting access to the food that they need. And there was a paradigm that was shared with me that I want to also impart to all of you. And that is that the work of the Women's Service Organization in Ottawa focuses on 3 things. It focuses on earning trust, understanding the plight of immigrant women, and also doing those two things so that thirdly, they could develop a tailored settlement plan. And what that ensures is that we see that no two cases are the same, that we take a very tailored approach to each and every migrant woman. This means also taking a gender lens across government, which is why Canada applies a GBA Plus analysis to all of our work. GBA Plus ensures that policies and programs consider their impacts on people of different genders, races, ages, disabilities, and sexual orientations. Pour aider les femmes migrantes à s'intégrer et à se remettre de la pandémie, il faudra adopter une approche globale, une approche qui tient compte des besoins en matière de santé mentale, des responsabilités à l'égard de la prestation de soins et de l'innovation dans le marché du travail. Canada's work to integrate newcomers begins with our settlement and resettlement assistance programs. Partnerships with over 500 organizations help us serve the diverse needs of newcomer women. In some ways, this is the secret ingredient of Canada's immigration system. Getting people here is one thing. Once they've arrived, this constellation of services sets up migrant women for success, from employment help to language training. An important element of this is our Visible Minority Newcomer Women Pilot, which helps migrant women hone their skills and find jobs. But over the last year, we know that an increase in gender-based violence has become a shadow pandemic, and it is a top concern for us. We're building bridges between our settlement partners and anti-violence organizations to ensure people have the knowledge and skills they need to address this very difficult issue. It can be difficult for women to escape abusive situations when they're unsure of their status. So we're also putting new measures in place, like the Family Violence Temporary Resident Permit. This special permit, available at no cost, offers those experiencing abuse, as well as their children, legal immigration status in Canada. And coming back to my earlier point about listening to those with lived experience, this initiative was informed by service providers and migrant women themselves, who told us that there were gaps in the system that needed to be addressed. So we did. Nous devons éliminer les obstacles systémiques persistants à la pleine intégration des femmes migrantes dans la société. Nous devons aussi continuer à faire évoluer le discours, reconnaître l'importance de l'égalité des genres, la résilience des femmes migrantes et leur importante contribution à nos communautés. So I've talked a little bit about where we are right now, but I'd like to also look to the future. Despite being one of the most pro-immigration countries on the planet, Canadians aren't always aware of the positive impact that immigration has in their own community. And beyond that, as we've seen, violence against minorities and hate crimes increase worldwide in recent years. It's critical that we remain vigilant in pushing back against misinformation. That's why I'm very pleased to announce the launch of the It Takes a Community campaign. Canada is proud to co-lead this project through the Global Forum on Migration and Development. Of course, everyone here today understands the importance of immigration. This new campaign aims to spread that message far and wide, using digital communication to share stories about how immigration is strengthening our economies and enriching our communities. But we can't do it alone, which is why the campaign will engage governments, businesses, organizations, and individuals to share their own experiences. Our campaign fosters support for immigration from the ground up, starting with those who typically first interact with newcomers, community organizations, educational and other public institutions, the private sector, and neighbors. And I, on the occasion of being able to deliver these remarks, reflect on a publication that was developed by Ocasia, local organization in my community, where they published Telling Our Stories, Immigrant Women's Resilience, which is written by immigrant women to support immigrant women. And through this and other such sharing of narratives, we will be able to learn, share, and promote together. Better public understanding and support means better integration, which sets newcomer women up for success. Canada knows that when migrant women succeed, we all succeed. Supporting them is the right thing to do for our society and the smart thing to do for our economy. While we've made important strides, there remains much more to be done. And that's why discussions like today are so important. Merci.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. Thank you. Hearing your intervention, we can really tell that one of the key secrets or ingredient for Canada leadership in migration and integration policymaking is your constant commitment to improving, innovating policies based on evaluation and consultation, which is great. Iman and Ila, you now have the opportunity to ask one question to the Commissioner and one question to the Minister. Iman, would you like to break the ice with a question which resonates particularly with your lived experience of woman and migrant? Iman, can you please unmute yourself?
Yeah. Gender-based and family violence is an issue for many migrant women and their families. Why is it important to address this issue for newcomers?
Shukra, thank you. And it's very nice to hear from you. And, you know, what a happy coincidence to hear that you were able to acquire some support from the Women's Service Organization in Ottawa, whom I just spoke with. But let me say, in direct response to your question, that it is unacceptable that we have seen gender-based violence go up. It was already an issue prior to the pandemic. It has been exacerbated by COVID-19. That was something that I heard directly from the Women's Settlement Service groups with whom I have been engaging. And we are taking a very, very robust approach to trying to reduce that violence. And one of the ways in which we are doing that is by developing a gender-based violence national strategy, which is being led by my colleague, Minister Monsef. But in the context of immigration, we are having conversations with women's service organizations so we can learn about where the obstacles are to reducing violence. And I think it takes on a number of different solutions. One is to ensure that we are providing directly the support that is necessary. And that means tailoring that support, as I said, really understanding the individual plight of every migrant woman, but also to ensure that we are there to provide them with access to the justice that they need. And in order to achieve that justice, I think we have to really shift the narrative, as we said, because what I've heard is that there is a fear of being stigmatized, of not being believed, of being deported. And so by really addressing those issues, we reduce the barriers that allow women to come forward with their stories to achieve justice so that they can then reach their full potential and integrate into their communities. And one of the ways I think we can accomplish the success is by kicking off this campaign to share those stories widely within our community, but also to have those temporary permits at no cost. And by ensuring that we provide those guarantees, then the fear of deportation, the fear of removal, we hope will be reduced. And so those are just a couple of concrete ways in which we are addressing gender-based violence.
Thank you. Thank you, shukran.
Thank you. Commissioner Johansson, would you like also to provide your response?
Yes, and thank you. I think this is a very important question that you're putting forward. And first you asked why it's important, but maybe we should not need to answer actually why it's important, because it's about equal rights, of course. But I think this, as also said by Minister Mendicino, that this have been raising and increasing during the pandemic. And I think how we should tackle that is that we need to strengthen women, and we need to show the support that is available, because a lot of women, both migrant women and others, they're being threatened by their husband, by their man. So if you do that, or if you do that, then you will take our children, or something will happen, or you will be deported, or things like that. And that's not true. But if you are in a situation where you are being beaten and are being a victim of domestic violence, then you're being smaller and smaller and smaller each day. And after a while, you don't even believe in yourself. And that is really important, to reach out directly towards women, to show the support that is there. And I think that's why we talked about this family, whole of the family approach. Yes, but not always. It's also important to address women directly. so that it's not the information is not filtered by the husband, so that we can reach out directly to women. I think this is important. From the country I know best, I also learned that we can do a lot of prevention when it comes to addressing men that have come to a new country. Where I come from Sweden, where there's a much stronger position and more gender equality in society, and they feel a bit lost in a society with a high level of gender equality. And that's also supporting men to be able to talk about this new situation and how to be male in a gender equal society that is something very different from a society where you grow up. Also to helping so that this frustration of being male in new way will not turn into violence towards your wife or your partner. So I think it's both, of course, directly supporting women, but also trying to prevent family situation to deteriorate into violence.
Thank you. Thank you, Iman, for putting this important point under the spotlight of this platform. And thank you, Commissioner and Minister, for your answers, which underlie a strong commitment to paying increasing attention to the mental and physical health issues stemming from gender-based violence. Now, Anila, what is your question to the Commissioner and the Minister?
Yes, thank you. First, I would like to appreciate both Commissioner and President, Ministers. You know, we really want to keep this conversation ongoing. It's really important, and it's very important to ensure the migrant women are engaged and consulted on the policy and program that impact them to avoid the stereotypes. So thank you so much for acknowledging. And my question is that the needs involvement of migrant women for the gender equality is mostly viewed as a secondary in the migration policies and discussion. So how we can make sure that there are enough investment in the policies and program to advance gender equality for migrant women and to meet their needs, especially for migrant and refugee-led initiative, so they be involved as a priority, not as a second thought. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anila. Commissioner, would you like to start this time?
Yes, I'm happy to do to answer this, and I think this is really, really important because so often migrant women are being hidden so that they're not being visible. And then, if you look closer, you will see that the funding available will not go to women. The special programs are not addressing women. The special needs for women are not being seen, for example. So I think that I have a huge responsibility here, and also have member states, of course, to follow up, have the statistics, as you also talked about yourself, Anila, the importance of databases to follow up. How are we using the funds? How big proportion are being spent on men? How big proportion are being spent on women? How are we addressing special needs, for example, for women when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to sexual and reproductive health and rights, for example? How much attention do we pay to that, so that we actually follow up these results and do the benchmark and ask member states like, this member state, you are only spending half the money on women compared to the average in the European Union, or to a neighboring member state, for example. I think this is the way to act. As I said, statistics are the woman's best friend, and I really think so, because otherwise you can hide important aspects, and that makes women silent. And a way to have women's voices heard is by showing in statistics and results, and always have the gender aspect when it comes into statistics. How much go to women? How much go to men?
Thank you, Commissioner. Minister Mendicino, would you like to address the question too?
Well, thank you for that question, Anila. And I really want to associate myself with the remarks of the Commissioner. We know that prior to COVID-19, that over half of our immigration services are accessed by migrant women. And we have heard and seen firsthand that COVID-19 has presented even more obstacles and barriers to migrant women. And so that is one of the critical reasons why we have put a GBA plus lens on our policies. And as a value proposition, what we are trying to accomplish is the full participation of migrant women and indeed all women as part of our community, as part of our nation building exercise. So it's about ensuring that we put forward the necessary investments to really implement progressive policies, for example, like the Canada Child Benefit Plan, which is aimed at providing support for young families and as well as making sure that we are putting forward the supports that are necessary to reduce those barriers, particularly around gender-based violence, as I said. And in the context of immigration, by creating tools that will reduce the stigma, by starting a campaign like the one that we did today, by directly engaging with women's organization groups, we are creating the space that is necessary to co-develop those policies so that migrant women are driving the solutions that are required so that they can fully participate in reaching their own full potential. And certainly that is why I'm very, very happy to have been able to share the start of this campaign today.
Thank you, Minister Mendicino, Commissioner Johansson, Iman Daboussi, and Ilanur for this inspiring, committed, forward-looking conversation. We have run over time, as it always happens when you're engaged in such powerful and thrilling discussions. So without further delay, I shall turn to Mrs. Hilde Hardeman, who is Director of the EC Service for Foreign Policy Investments, for her concluding remarks. Mrs. Hardeman, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, Minister, distinguished participants of this panel, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends. It's a real privilege to close this event of the 2020 European Union-Canada Migration Platform. And I want to say I am truly impressed by what has been achieved over the past 2 months. Many have contributed with personal experiences, academic and institutional contributions. These experiences and contributions have nurtured a range of events and exchanges and led to a set of recommendations on how to improve the integration and well-being of immigrant women in Canada, the European Union, and beyond. And in fact, it's very simple. As Commissioner Johansson said it so well, integration is about being welcome. We all know what that means. And as Minister Mendicino underlined, integration is about embracing diversity. Discrimination and racism are and have to be off limit. Integration is about being proud members of society for women and men, boys and girls. Integration and gender are at the core of our policies. Both are strictly interrelated. Social integration of women, encouraging women to be proud and confident members of society, is crucial to success. To quote Minister Mendicino, when migrant women succeed, we all succeed. Many of the attendees today have migrated from their countries under difficult circumstances. One speaker offered the metaphor of a migrant person being like a transplanted tree. And indeed, while we cannot see them, we all have roots. It's never easy to adapt to a new culture, a new language, a new society. There is a human history behind each individual that needs to be heard and valued. Heartfelt thanks to those who shared their personal history, helping all to understand better what is at stake. I gratefully highlight the excellent cooperation between the EU and Canada, bound by deep historical and personal links and motivated by a shared commitment to common values. I would also like to thank all involved in this program for having given really their all. And let me conclude by quoting the 2020 International Migrants' Day message that promotes social cohesion. We learn together, create together, work together, sing, dance, and play together. We live together. And let me add that together we can work wonders. Together we really can change the world. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for your commitment, and stay safe. Thank you all.